Well, hello everyone. So we are live here from MindTouch headquarters. Thank you so much for having me, Steve.
Thanks for having me.
So why don't you actually introduce yourself to everyone?
Okay. I'm Steve Bjorg. I'm the founder and CTO of MindTouch, and also the author of LambdaSharp, which we'll hopefully be using today.
Yes, yes. So, you know, I was really kind of curious on what we could do with AWS and Lambda functions to provide this back end. And, you know, I had kind of reached out to you about this Moments app update that I've been working on. And it used to use an old Azure mobile service. So I'm really curious to see what we could do with AWS. So hopefully you can help us out with that.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Great. And I'll kind of show here on screen in a second. So if you haven't really looked at the Moments app update, it is on GitHub. This is a fork from Pierce Bogan's original Moments app. But it is up there on AvantiPoint/Moments on GitHub. So be sure to check that out. If you have any pull requests that you would like to do, if you want to take an issue, you want to provide a backend, anything like that, help us with the update. You're absolutely welcome to do that. So it is up there. Feel free to clone and do whatever you'd like to do. Anyway, so with that, I guess let me maybe come through here and look at code. I think this built earlier. Let's get rid of Zoom here. And so we have this abstraction layer that we've added where we have an account service, a friend service, and the moment service. So why don't we maybe start with this account service thing? We have a user account that we need to handle, a username, a password. We need to be able to take someone who doesn't have an account and create an account for them. So maybe you could walk us through how we might use AWS to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So why don't me?
Yeah, I'll let you share here.
So you walked me a little bit earlier through you introduced me to the code base, and we took a quick gander at it.
Yes.
And we had some ideas on
one of the delays that we had this afternoon.
So okay, let's start. So hopefully this works as expected. Great. Okay. So we have a nice little whiteboard here. So we have our client app, and going to the cloud, we are going to connect back to a Crud API. And this one is going to be powered by a service called API Gateway. And so for each of the HTTP endpoints, we are going to provide different routes, which we are then going to hook up to a Lambda function, which is the serverless infrastructure function as a service by AWS. So all of that's also going to be written in C#, .NET, using .NET Core. And then hopefully I can share with you the URL of that API gateway, and your client can write to it.
OK, awesome. Let's maybe look at a little bit of code and what you got going on here.
So I need to write the whole thing from scratch, right? So
yes,
do you want me to? OK.
So maybe share your screen and show us kind of how we would go about setting all of this up.
Absolutely. So let me go back in here and share my screen again. Great. So all I've done so far is setting up a very basic LambdaSharp environment. For this, I'm using the unreleased version, 0.7, simply because I've been working for it a while, and I'm quite comfortable at least with it. But the released version, 0.6, is extremely similar. So the other thing is here we have the same project. I'm using VS Code instead of Visual Studio, which you're using.
Sure.
And all I've done so far is add a new AWS subfolder next to the Azure folder, where we're going to be creating the infrastructure for writing the service.
OK.
So hardest thing usually to get started, to clear this out, checking it was working, is create something new. So I try to make that as simple as possible. I simply say launch new module. And so that effectively creates, let's call that the Moments API.
So what is Lash? Because I think a lot of people probably haven't heard of Lash.
Yes, Lash is LambdaSharp, and it's a .NET tool for writing basically serverless applications, infrastructure, specialized on C# and .NET.
Okay.
So there's several other frameworks out there, which are all, many of them fantastic, but they're either polyglot, so they don't really specialize in any specific language,
Okay.
or they specialize in JavaScript, which of course is extremely popular. So because here at MindTouch we use a lot of C# and .NET, that's actually how we started becoming a cloud company, using Mono as our backend, and now of course more recently starting to use .NET Core. We felt the necessity to kind of make our lives a little bit easier combining these components by building a tooling that is really, really friendly to .NET developers.
Awesome.
So that's
and that's free for anybody to use,
yes,
right?
it's open source, it's free.
Okay. So if someone wants to use this, how would they get that?
GitHub.com/LambdaSharp,
Okay.
LambdaSharp tool. And you can obviously get cloned from here, or it's also published. So you can say .NET install tool, LambdaSharp.tool, and that will install the latest version.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So pretty simple. Great. So this will have created an empty module description for our API. And then the next thing we want to do is add a new function. So I say /new function. And I guess in this case, we just call it the moments function, since it will be housing all our code. And that will have created a new subproject that is just C# code, and with the appropriate inclusions and so on and so forth. So we're going to be using .NET Core 2.1. That's the latest stable version that AWS supports for the Lambda functions.
Okay.
And we are, for all practical purposes, should be ready to just build this and have something that we can now deploy easily into our AWS account.
Perfect.
From here. So what I'll be doing is now start, let me jump out of sharing my screen, just so we have something more interesting to look at. So the first step is going to be defining all the Crud endpoints for our API that we want to interact with, and then provide some implementation behind it. Probably first a very simple hard-coded implementation, and then we're going to provide storage behind it, and so on and so forth. So you're going to have to be writing,
build on top of it.
Yes, exactly. So you're going to have to interface with it, and I have to imbue with some life. So when you do actions, you don't get the same response back every single time, which is definitely what you're going to get.
So there's like a little bit of real mobile real development processes here of us trying to figure out what that contract is, and then front end and back end kind of tying together.
But because we both are using C#, the cool thing is I will be able, or at least attempt to, use the actual definitions that are already existing in the Moments app and make those the JSON contract for the backend. Now, one of the cool things with API Gateway is you can tell it to enforce that contract. So if you decide to send the wrong payload to the endpoint that says it's taken in like a user object, it will just reject it, and I don't have to write any code for that. It will just be taken care of automatically, which is kind of nice. No compute overhead, API Gateway does it for us.
That's great. I love that.
Yeah, less coding.
I'm a lazy programmer. I don't want to write more code than I have to.
Great, so yeah, what do you would say, how do you want to take next? Because I'm probably going to have to dive into this. And
sure.
Do we have an agreement on what these endpoints should be structured like? What endpoints do we need? Let's
so
once you have login, but we have user account creation as well.
Yeah, so let's maybe start with a register, right? Because you can't really log in if you can't create an account.
That seems reasonable. Okay, so this is the iAccount service, correct? Okay, so register takes two things, an account and a user. So who created the account?
That is a fantastic question.
So if I look at, do you want to share the screen?
Yes, let me share my screen.
So we can look a little bit at the code that we're looking at here, or I can share mine, whichever.
If I can find the right window. Okay.
So I'm looking at the account object.
So I'm looking here in our sign up view model in the app, because I figure that'll probably give us the best information. So it looks like when we're doing this sign up, we take the user object is taking the first name and last name of whatever they entered in, garbage in, garbage out, of course, and then it for the profile image, we're using the Gravatar service, to get the URL for their Gravatar image. So that's what we pass up that way. And then you've got this account.
So the account has a username, a password, not a password hash, but a password.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Has a password, a full password, which you will need to hash.
Okay.
Or, you know, like so many large companies do. I know healthcare.gov did this for a long time. Just store it in plain text. You know, who cares?
Equifax. How many more are there?
I mean, if all we did was name drop all the large companies,
that would be the order that I stream.
So we have this user ID, which I'm not even entirely sure where that comes from.
Since you just initialized it like 2 steps earlier.
We just did that, but it was never actually set. Like there's nothing in the user class that initializes that with.
Well, it would seem to make sense
ID.
that the server would give you back a unique ID.
Yeah,
like
but we haven't even sent this to, like the weird thing in this code.
Okay, so how does it proceed? So this is the code in the register endpoint, correct? Which this is the account.
So, and like this is all before we've even called the sign in or the create account. So we just have those. Like that's just really weird that we're using this user ID. So we'll have to figure that out.
Yep.
You know, maybe
because that's obviously going to be null.
Here, so I can just, you know, let me just call GUID, new GUID, and it's a string. So
well, hold on. I mean, the client should be the one that sets the unique user ID, right? That needs to be done by the server, otherwise you could claim to be. I'm just going
to do this for right now. We can refactor later.
Okay, got it.
But it seems that, like, at least this way, we are ensuring that we have an ID. So yeah, but no, I agree with you. The ID really should come from the server. And so let's go into this create account. So I don't even know why we have a method for this. This is silly. So I'm still trying to get used to this new touchpad on the Mac.
Yeah, this is a little odd. It says create account and then it says sign in, right?
Yeah. Well, you have
with the account.
Like you have a method that only has one line. I kind of have a rule. If you don't need a method if it's one line. So let me kind of simplify that a little bit. So we just we're calling the account service for our register method. Now let's maybe take a look at what the old Azure backend did.
Okay, can I add something?
Sure.
So the account is really kind of like the Moments API that I'm going to be creating, right? I mean, it's specific. So if somebody else were to recreate this project and they deploy all the code, they would effectively have a different account. It's kind of like their endpoint. So maybe in the original version, there was a username password to protect it, which was obviously globally shared. I don't know what there's an email, because when the create happens, I mean, we pass in a user, right? You create that specific user. Also, afterward, we sign in with the account. So now maybe, what the account does link to the user you wanted to use. I mean, what you're going to need is an API key and an API URL.
Yeah.
That's specific to what I'm going to be instantiating. So those kind of replace the username and password in a way.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, we do want, like.
Where does username come from?
Well, there's a form.
Oh, is that the?
There's a form. So they add a username as well as their password. So this is kind of silly that they're just kind of inserting that table. So it's just all it is a post to create a new record. I see. Okay. So actually, I guess we didn't need that. So I mean, talk about simplifying things, right? So we actually don't need in our view model to set this user ID, because that's being done for us by the service, and we don't need to do that. Okay. So let me go back to the account service here. So yeah, so what they were doing was they were creating the user first, taking that object that they got back and setting the user ID of the account, and then inserting the account and create the new account.
Okay, well, that came from that came actually from the created client. Mm-hmm. So who set the user ID?
So that actually came back from...
Not really, it's getting passed in.
Well, yeah, so they passed in the user, and when this insert occurred, it automatically added the ID. It's a little bit of magic.
Yes.
I would make fun of magic, but you already know my magic story for the day. I abracadabra.
Yes. Leave it at that. Okay.
So I'm going to add a project here real quick.
So what's the payload I should be expecting, and what's the response you will be expecting in return?
That's a good question.
Are you going to send the account object? The account object doesn't have a nested object. So it sounds like it has to be, if the account and the user required both, and the user seems to be carrying some personal things like, hey, what's my display name? So the user, if you look at the user class, it's almost like it's like your preferences, your user preferences.
Yeah.
What is my display name? What's my profile image? Something like that. And then the account has the actual username and the password, which I assume is what you use to log in. And this was written probably a while ago before email became kind of your de facto login opportunity. So you're still broadcasting your screen, right?
No.
Okay. So when you register, we need both. We need both your kind of personal identifiable information, which contains your email, but we also need your preferences, which is your display name and your image, which defaults to Gravatar initially.
Sure.
So what's the payload? Because it's neither one of those classes in a way. It's almost like a dedicated...
I would kind of say it's just, it's an object that is both of those, or that has a property for both of those. So
okay. So it would be a new object that nests both of them. It would have an account
and
property, and it would have a user property,
correct.
And that becomes the payload.
Yes.
Okay.
And then as far as that mapping with the user ID, that can all be handled on the back end, because when you're creating that user record, you're going to take that ID and add that to the
and somehow respond back. I noticed that many of the methods don't seem to have return values. So they must either be modifying the state that is being passed in, or, well, I guess we'll figure it out when we dive. I mean, at some point you're going to have to create a mobile client for this, right?
Yeah, so, I mean, we can still return something back that's useful.
Oh, yeah, but the API, that's the only way the API can communicate.
Exactly, and then handle that kind of behind the scenes. The app doesn't need to be aware of anything new, though.
Yeah. Okay.
It's all in the implementation.
Yes. Okie dokie. So let's see. Maybe I'll start sharing my screen. Let's just try to integrate this. Okay. Oh, sweet. The menu is right there in the way. Okie dokie. So I was looking at the different classes. So one thing I will need to do is I want access to these two classes. So that's inside the moments abstractions folder. Now, I always forget what the notation is for this, but there is a. Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna create a new item group, and then I'm gonna add them explicitly. So that's like an include statement, right?
Yeah.
Let me Google that.
So I can just tell you.
You know,
compile, include.
Compile, include, and then the path. Okay. So that's the nice little game. So up, slash up, slash. Now we go. Now it should be in AWS. So one more time, and then we should be able to go into source moments.abstractions. And then backslash models, backslash user.cs. Let's start with that, because I think that one is fully self-contained. And so if I go into, let's see my function here, just for good measure, I'm just going to make a reference to it. and see if it's going to complain. Unless OmniSharp, of course, is not happy. Okay, we'll just call it moments. Moments functions. Okay, we don't need to build the other thing, so compile start tag. Nope, doesn't like it. Oh, did I forgot to close it? That's what I did. XML. Love is never lost.
Perfect.
Now, did this copy it, or did it
No,
just keep us a reference?
So you only have, like the file only exists one time.
Perfect. Okay, good.
But like if you were to look at it in the IDE, you would see it in that project.
Yeah. Oh, I think there's another attribute which is like a name attribute or something. But
so you can do a link. So because right now.
Yeah, that's exactly what I want.
Yeah. No, the other thing is, did you want to bring in everything in that models folder?
No, because from experience, when I've done that in the past, sometimes it grabs on something too much, and then that grabs onto something else, grabs onto something else. So I like to explicitly include what I want, and that way I can kind of like control the blast radius of how much is being sucked in.
Okay. I like to wildcard, but we're good.
I may resort to that if I get tired of like adding more and more inclusive. But since it's only the payloads, it should be fairly easy.
All right. So, and like doing all of this from VS Code, it's really transparent. You don't really notice that anything is going on. But if you were to do any of this like in Visual Studio or Visual Studio for Mac, it would actually show that in the root of your project. So it wouldn't show up in like the models folder within your project. Mm-hmm. So if you wanted to do that, you could use the link attribute in the compile tag, and then
moments functions. Okay, got that wrong. This is the nope. I was up too many folders, I think. Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's try that again. Okay, error still could not. Probably misspelled that. It's account, not accounts, because the other one was found. So I figured, oops, we should be in a good spot. Okay, so it's able to resolve it. Now you're gonna need the payload definition as well. Okay, that's just a warning saying that hey, you're defining something that's never being used. Great. So I guess now let's create a new class in this folder, which is the combined one. What do you want to call it? Account registration payload, or?
Sure. So, and for some of this, I mean, we're doing this in a live stream, so obviously there are certain design decisions that we're going to make here that, shall we say, would be terrible in production.
Yes, no, don't do this in production. Look at it to learn, and maybe you shouldn't be quite doing it this way. Absolutely. Account.
But yeah, so I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, we may not share certain things today that we can go back and refactor later.
Okay, so this would be now an account registration payload that sends both the account and the user. And on my side, I still need to register this one, so I have access to it now. Well, go back here. Just because I know I would completely mistype this.
You know, and things like commit to master, you should probably not do that in production either.
Yes. Okay, good. All right, so I should be ready to roll here in terms of now accepting this kind of payload. Okay. Oh, what's the response? Actually, this is what. No, never mind. I want to call this request. Oh. And then we have a public. Can't believe you make me write in this level of indentation and parentheses. Cunningham and Ritchie forever. Okay.
So I'm going to make you use spaces instead of tabs too.
Get out. Okay, so what do we need to send back? Is it the? Do you just want to send back the minimum? Because we certainly have the user ID, right, during registration.
Sure. So it looks like for this register, I mean, all it really did was create the records. It didn't even really care about anything else.
But are you looking at the client? You're saying get table and so on. That looks more like the UI code, no?
Yeah, so let me look at what this did.
Okay.
So basically, on the create, so it tries to do the create, and then whenever the create is done, it's going to take that username and password and call the login function next.
Okay.
So you really you can pass back anything. I mean,
well, somehow
you RESTful. I mean, you can do what is it? 201, I think, is the code, but.
Well, I'm more looking at the payload that is coming back. I mean, you don't know the user ID technically, right? I mean, you shouldn't know the user ID. That needs to be sent back by the server.
Well, you don't really need it at that point, I don't think, because it seems like what our goal is we tried to create the account, and now we're going to try to log in normally with a username and password. And then if we've logged in, we're going to get that response, whatever that login response looks like.
Okay, so let's
whatever the response is that we get from the API, from the account creation kind of doesn't matter because we're not checking for it anyway.
Yeah, so I mean, this login method is a bit weird because it takes a Boolean, it returns a Boolean, but it takes nothing as a payload.
But we're not actually using that one. What's being used
we're using
is
this
the next
one, right?
one, yes.
Yeah, okay. So this is the account. So the account contains the username, the password, and with the email and the user ID, which is, so it's extremely overspecified.
But I think what it ultimately cares about, and we can implement this however we want, but as long as you provide either an email or password.
Well, that's always going to be my follow-up question. I mean, what on my side should I consider to be basically your credentials? Right, the password part is easy.
Sure.
Do you want me to make email basically your primary mode of identification, in which case a username is not particularly useful. So the username is almost more like a display preference or account, I guess. I mean, so you can use either one to log in. Is that what you're thinking? A little bit like Facebook-ish. I can put in my email address or I can put in my username.
Yeah, so I'm trying to figure that out right now.
I can do it. What happens if both are specified and they are not consistent? Does one take precedence over the other?
I don't know. It's a great question.
Okay. Well, while we ponder these amazing questions, I need to do a little bit of work here because I noticed that when I created it, I just called it Moments API. So let me put it in the same namespace, moments.api.
So I think I might have actually pulled a little too much out, and I need to go back and look at the original.
And so the other thing I need them to fix is in here, default namespace, my moments becomes moments.api. Oops, would land one less dot.
Okay, so it looks like
the other
for the sign-in, we were using the username and password as what we were actually sending up.
Okay, so the email was actually not needed. I mean, I'm okay with making one the preference of the other. So you just want username and password, period. Fine.
That's basically what we're doing. Now, on the back end, you could certainly check both the username and the email field that you've stored. Why not? But
well, it just makes more logic. I mean, it's because now I have two fields. No, I don't really have a primary key, right?
But that's just more work for you, so I don't really care how you implement that.
I appreciate your concern for my fingers. LambdaSharp dot. Why isn't it auto-completing? I think my OmniSharp is not super happy right now. Come on, let's restart here.
Okay.
Because I'm not getting the auto-completion and the squigglies I would like it to give me. Oh, it's not happy about something. Sweet. So I'm going to be flying blind a little bit here. No assistance by the ID. It's back to 1990. You want to know what's broken? Compile it. Okay, I think this thing was called. So I need to change the base class for this guy. That's now our Lambda API gateway function. Okay. And then we don't need this guy because we are going to have multiple entry points. So the first one I want to create is this. So this account. Oops. God, my goodness. So many response, registration, async, and it takes account registration request. Request. Okay. And then, oops, return account registration response. For now, let's not put anything in there. Oops, or maybe I put a new statement in front so it doesn't look completely terrible. Okay, I'm just gonna put my shell here. Moments. CD AWS first. The other one. Moments. Oh, it loves it. So much deliciousness. Where to begin? Account registration. Oh, payload could not be found. Yeah, because of. No, I didn't rename it. Strange. I put it in the wrong spot. It's more. No, wait. Wait a second. Where the heck? It is definitely the wrong spot. It should be here. Gonna move it. Oh, and I should probably push this definition up to you, so that you can see it. So this is actually, oh, I should really just have one in here, but I can't have both. Well, the response has nothing. So for now, it's an empty object.
Okay.
Okay, let's build.
I mean, realistically, if you want to just keep the account registration in your AWS.
Well, you're going to have to send it.
Yeah, no, I can reference that in another project that I'm doing, so I don't need it in the abstractions. And that way we're keeping it.
Well, but then we have kind of like half here, half there. That's kind of a little bit the downside. By keeping them all together, the nice thing is all your abstract definitions.
Yeah, but it'll be
shared.
It'll be tied in with the AWS module that I'm doing specific.
Okay, that looks good.
So basically, I'm just going to reference it the same way that you were referencing those models.
Cannot convert from what to what? Can it please convert from type blah to blah? Moments function 933. Oh, duh. Yes, you wouldn't be able to do that. Indeed, forgot the async keyword as usual. Should really not be needed. Everything should be just automatically async when you give it a task. I'm sure that's a popular opinion.
Yes. And you got very lucky. I did not make these observable.
They literally, they have JSON ignore, JSON property. I mean, they're clearly intended for communication. Why would you?
Well, if anything that you might bind directly in the UI would be an observable, something that implements iNotify property change.
Makes sense.
So, but you just kind of have to determine, is it something that it's pure business logic, or is it something that I might actually need to bind in the UI? Like actually, I'm surprised on the moments that, you know, for images, usually I want something, but it depends on how it's added.
Okay, so now I'm going to enhance here. Let me just take out some stuff here. This is no longer called moments, just moments. This is called moments.api. I'm just going to remove some. That's the default. Nuke the description. Okay, it's a little bit more compact. There's a dummy variable definition. Yip-de-doo. We don't need this. Okay, this is absolutely minimalistic. So what I'm doing now is I'm effectively mapping a Crud API gateway entry point to a method written in C#.
Okay.
So all I need is the name of the method, and I need to give it the path that it goes to. Oops. Okay, and I don't need the async, that will automatically figure it out. So because this will also be used for documentation purposes, so it's kind of nice to keep the async off. All right, so unless I mistype this, we should be able to just go up here and, try this. Okay, /build. Oops. What API format? Yeah. Duh. Sources. Oh yeah, let me look at an example again. API gateway invoke assembly example, blah blah. Oh, get. I forgot to specify the, of course, the HTTP method. Okay, let's go back in here. Oh, this is a post though. So boom. Okay, building. Now, what's doing behind the scenes, I mean, obviously it's building the C# code, and it's also creating a CloudFormation template, which is infrastructure as code. So it allows you to easily deploy it over and over again, make rollbacks easier. But it's actually verifying that the definitions that we gave it to wire up the API gateway creation to our C# code, it used inspection, code inspection. So it loaded the assembly to find if this registration method actually exists in that moment's function that we told it to go to.
Okay.
Now, little fun fact, because they don't allow for what was this called again, where you could like unload domains, app domains. So app domains are not supported in .NET Core.
Okay.
And you cannot unload assemblies. But the compiler needs to be able to move things around and access them. And of course, assemblies get locked once you have loaded them. So it's actually calling, the tool is invoking itself recursively to ask it to inspect this assembly. So when the process terminates, the lock on the assembly gets released as well, and I get the metadata I needed. So it's a different way, you know, if you don't want to use mono-Cecil to inspect a live assembly, this is a way that you can do it and not keep a lock. It's by calling another process. So that's what they did behind the scenes.
Cool.
Yeah, it took me a while to figure out, so I wanted to share. It's one of those proud, father moments. Okay, great. So that has been built. So we should actually be able to just deploy it. And that will give us kind of like the first iteration of the thing. The other thing I'm going to start up is Postman, because that's going to be a good tool for testing our API.
You haven't done the REST client in VS Code yet, huh?
That's you. Everything client side is you, buddy. I'm doing everything.
No,
so
I'm saying
don't worry, I'm going to slow down a lot when.
No, I'm saying in VS Code, like it's really great. Like they have a whole. There's an extension for VS Code.
Oh, okay. Instead of Postman, you mean?
Yeah, instead of Postman, so you can just like create it, and it's really nice because it forces you to remember like here are my headers and all this, and there's not like a ton of magic. And it's something you can check into source control and actually.
Oh, really? So it's okay. Postman is, I've been super happy with it, but it sounds like it's inspired a little bit by with those features as well. Okay, so let's see. Oh, great. Parameter name hash. How about we go back to you in the studio while I figure out why I'm getting an internal null error.
Yeah, we can certainly switch off here. Perfect. So let me share my screen then. And we'll come over here into Visual Studio.
Yeah, let me also push up those definitions, right?
Yeah, we could definitely do that. That would be good.
The account registration.
So actually, it looks like that did build for me because I was having a few problems. So I added a project here, this moments.aws backend. And it looks like Visual Studio is very unhappy. Even though it builds, it shows me nothing but compiler errors. Like it cannot load the proper context apparently. So let's try to get this. Come on. No, okay. So I may have to close the solution. And reopen it. Maybe this will work. I don't know. Pierce, if you're watching, could you please fix this for the love of God? So annoying, I have to go out and back in again. All right, so let's start wiring some things up. So create a services folder, and I'll have my, if this works, come on. Okay, of our AWS account service. Account service. Bring that in and implement it. I use the term implement very loosely here. By implement, I simply mean, throw not implemented exception.
Okay, basically make the compiler happy. Got it. Pretty much that's the only one. Your service.
Maybe we won't throw exceptions, but return a task of false or something.
Yeah, I'm quickly switching back to the stable version 0.6, since other than debugging the not yet released version and figuring out why it's showing the tool throwing a null exception, I think this would be a faster path to success. Let's see if
I'm still trying to get used to the new touchpad and keyboard on Mac. I don't know who thought it was a good idea. Task completed. Okay. So we've got that, and then you said you just checked in something.
Yep, so if you should do a pull, it's just adds the account registration request response classes.
Okay. So I'm just trying to think here. I'm going to release the Kraken. I don't know if you've used Git Kraken.
No, it's in the movie, yes. No, it was not time well spent.
Let's see here.
Okay, nicely initializing.
Oh, actually.
Okay, so while that's going.
Oops. It would really help if I actually could browse to the repo. There we go. Get this eventually. We're gonna try this one out. I'm really used to source tree, so this will be interesting. So let me, I guess. Where's a fetch? Just want to fetch. So that's pull. All right, so I guess what I'll do then is let me just stash everything. So now all my changes should be stashed. If I come in here, well, repos. Oh, hold on. I guess I'm actually in. Right. Okay. So git fetch. Okay, and then we'll say you pushed it already, or?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, it was just one class ultimately, but trying to add the DynamoDB package to my moments function. Boom, done. Account record. Okay, let's see. So in the background, I was initializing a new environment. Hopefully, that's almost there. It's still requiring some resources. Okay.
So we'll try this again. I am not used to this at all.
I still feel weird that I don't have a response for you, kind of like a user ID. I'm just going to respond with a user ID, and you can decide to ignore it. The server things, you should be doing this. Yeah, my Omni Sharp is so not happy. Okay.
What did we screw up there? Git Kraken is.
Aha, okay, that's good. So yeah, I mean, ultimately your ID is
one conflict. Show me what the conflict is. I don't care about release notes. I just want. This is something where it's like I might need to not use this in the future. It's too difficult. Work in progress. Hello. All right. So I guess maybe it didn't save or something. I always hate when Visual Studio does that. You make a change, it doesn't actually save the file, but...
But hold on, when you hit build, it auto-saves everything.
Not all the time.
But it's unfortunate.
Sometimes it's like all in memory until you actually close Visual Studio. Because it seems like the files are there, but the solution didn't save correctly.
Okay, so in the meantime, I'm creating the, so I'm now able to create the API gateway Crud endpoint. And so I downgraded from 0.7, which is the unreleased version, to 0.6, which is the stable released version. And gee, golly, the null exception went away during the deployment. Anyway, so it's creating all the resources now on the AWS account that I needed.
Okay.
The various endpoints, the validators, the model for the request and the response. It's creating the invocation policies, and so on and so forth. So it's just kind of like going through the whole initialization procedure. So I can share my screen, just kind of show a little what that looks like.
Sure.
Okay. And the only change I had to do, the red here at the top, just before it's called out of view, is, of course, I had a 0.7 work in progress reference. I had to switch it back down to 0.6. And other than that, no, there were no code changes. I really just changed the tooling. So minimal changes in that regard.
Okay.
But as you can see here, these are all the resources that were created on AWS. So it created a role in Lambda land, or actually in general in AWS. In order to do something, you must have permission to do so. And that is the same thing for functions that you, Lambda function that you upload. So every function has a role, and the role defines the permission that they have. It then created a REST API endpoint, which we were going to be using for interacting. Some registration, which is specific to the LambdaSharp tool. It then created the resource itself, which is the /registration, the models for the response and request for the validation, and they also act as documentation. Various policies for accessing other resources, the function itself, which got automatically compiled and uploaded for deployment, and then the permissions and so on and so forth. So so the tool took care of everything. It's still exactly the same code that we had initially, but now if we log in back into the account here, we should see demo moments API and all the resources associated with it, as well as the API endpoint itself. So the next step for me is going to be to take the URL for the API and put it into Postman and just set it up so I can easily test that the requests are generating the right response.
Okay.
So, okay, stop sharing.
No, feel free to share.
I'm trying to figure out my next move here. So it's like, okay, so the code is uploaded. So, okay, yeah, sure. I'll just go back into this here so I can say I'm sharing my screen. Bam. Great. Okay. So the only thing I changed in the code implementation itself is add a couple of to-dos. So first thing we need to do is check if this account is already registered. So we receive the registration request. And the next thing is then to insert a new account record atomically, so we bypass concurrency conditions. I have already added the DynamoDB package as well to the solution. So we should know to access that. We do need to still define a DynamoDB table by itself.
Okay.
Okay, these definitions up here for the request and the response are no longer needed. They're kind of like for generic Lambda functions, but we use the API gateway base class, so we have access to much more sophisticated processing. Should add this little to-do here, set user ID, in case we do need it. Okay, so let's see. Here we go. Okay. I'm just going to find a DynamoDB example because doing this for memory is never going to be having a good ending. Great. So here we have one of the samples that use DynamoDB. So I'm just going to bring that in. So what I need to do is tell it. So in addition to creating the API gateway, I also now need a table in which I can store all the records.
Yep.
And okay, I'll just remove this. The only function I need access to it is this guy. It's a DynamoDB table. Okay, I want read, write access to it. And then these we need to customize. Now, in DynamoDB is an interesting beast. As you know, it's a schemaless table, but there are two ways that you can fundamentally create it. You can either just have a primary key and then any number of columns associated with it.
Yes.
And then it basically acts like almost like memcache. I mean, you fetch something by primary key, and it's either there or it's not there, and that's it. But you have another mode where you can have a primary key and a sort key. And then you can either fetch something by saying, hey, you can put both together, and then it still acts as a unique key. Or you can say, I want this primary key and then this range on the sort key, and it finds you everything that is in that range. And that actually allows you to do some pretty nifty mapping and map multiple types of records into a single DynamoDB table.
Okay.
So I've read a lot about it. I've never implemented it in practice. So let's do that. What can possibly go wrong, right?
Nothing can go wrong from this.
Absolutely nothing. But it fundamentally means that the...
I feel like we're doing a hackathon
yes,
live.
Yes. But it fundamentally means that the column that's going to keep your primary ID and then your sort key, you shouldn't name them after an entity. You shouldn't call them like, user ID or something, because ultimately it's going to be overloaded for multiple purposes. So you have to give it a more generic name.
Okay.
So that's what we're going to do next. And so let me go back and share my screen. And okay, so your best friend, as always, is Google, CloudFormation, DynamoDB. Because there's way too many fields. So we're just going to look at what fields we need to put into CloudFormation's definitions. So we want two things. Wait a second. Which one am I looking at? Oh, key schema. Okay, we'll start with key schema. There we go. Key type hash, key type range. Okay. These are the ones. Range. And then this is the sort key. And this is the primary key. Primary key. Sort key. Oh, we don't need this. This is for notifications to changes. Okay, pay per request. So we only pay for what we actually send and receive from it. So we're not provisioning any capacity in advance. The next thing we want to access this table from in here. So in the initialization, I need to tell it that I want access to it. So the fun part is now not having autocomplete. Amazon dot. I'm going to fix that by actually exiting here, because the reason it is not happy, I believe, is because it's pulling all the other crap. So if I just open in the subfolder, it should be fine. Code dot. Okay, so now I don't see the other stuff anymore, but I'll add it as a, maybe I'll add it as a separate folder. So I need OmniSharp, otherwise this is going to become very sad very quickly. Okay, so what was I using? Amazon dot. Please give me autocomplete. Still loading? Ah, there we go. There we go, DynamoDB. Yes! At last, I'm in business. Okay. Okay, so now comes the whole fun jazz. Okay, Amazon DynamoDB client. This is my DynamoDB client. DynamoDB client. And we're initializing it in here. So initialize async gets called the very first time the function initializes. That's the cold start period. After that, when it gets reinvoked, you can actually keep state in memory. So that's both, of course, a double-edged sword. If you
can't really rely on state, but
no,
you can use it.
Oh, well, it would be a cold start again. It's just you shouldn't rely that all the state will be cleared out because you finished your invocation. So if you're holding on to large objects, the next time you get another request, your memory consumption will start right there. I mean, it will just continue growing. And when we initialized at the beginning, when we allocated how much memory we could use, we told it, hey, no more than 256 megabytes, you can run up to 30 seconds. So you could actually run out of memory, which would then force a cold start. So if you're smart about it, you can use it for caching things between requests, and that makes it a bit faster. But if you think that things are not being held onto between requests, you can get into trouble. So you also want to make sure that you don't kind of like assume things and then pass on state from one user to another. So you have to be aware of it. So static functions do not automatically reset themselves if you're past the cold start scenario. Okay, we just need to initialize this. It's pretty easy. Now the next thing we want is let's see, there's another abstraction that is really convenient working with DynamoDB, and I believe, can't remember if it's data model or the other one. Oh, great. Oh, yeah, let's see. We'll find out. Private table. Nope. Not a verb. Autocomplete. Really? The document model. And you couldn't suggest that? Oh, I was trying to jump to the definition. Well, okay. Table, so new table. So we need to give it the name of the table we want to talk to. Come on. What is my thingy? This is the class, so it should have a constructor. Client and table name. Okay, that's what I thought. DynamoDB client, and then the table name, which we need to read from our configuration. So here we just say read, dot read DynamoDB table name, and the name of the variable in which it will be contained, which is this guy, so it's called table. I guess I could have remembered that. Okay. Why we're not happy? Does not connect constructor takes 2. Really? I just looked at it. Come on. Oh, load tables are static. Duh. As always, going off memory. Terrible, terrible idea. It's not what I type, it's what I mean.
I'm just looking at this model that you checked in with a public class and private or internal properties.
Yeah, okay.
That'll be very usable.
Hey, it's the intention that counts, right? Oh my goodness. Yeah, let's make this public. I think that would be a massive improvement.
Yeah.
Okie dokie. So the cool thing with tables is how easy it is to insert the records. So put item, and then it's a document. And a document can be initialized from a JSON payload. So we can say document from JSON. And we can now just give it something.
You don't have to create anything special. Like you don't have to have like a special type of, DTO or something to store this.
Well, there's multiple ways you can do it, right? Now you can call serialized object, serialized JSON, and give it an object. So I mean, if we're really lazy, oh come on, we can give it an anonymous object, and it will serialize that for us. Right, we need to give it two keys, pk equals a string and sk equal a string, that's what I call the primary key and the sort key. But let's we can probably do a little bit better than that. Okay, we need an await on this. Okay, so that's technically all that is needed in terms of inserting a record. It's pretty much as simple as I've been able to get DynamoDB. Now, what it doesn't do, we don't have a constraint that something shouldn't be set, so like that the object shouldn't already exist. And maybe we'll leave that as an exercise to read it for later, so split of time. It's on put item, you can give it a constraint that you want certain things to be true. The thing, if you tell it you want it to be true, that these things don't yet exist.
You can't have multiple users with the same username or multiple users with
the same.
Well,
that would be guaranteed. However, what is not guaranteed is, let's say you register the email address and I try to, or the username, and I try to register at the same time.
Well, that's what I'm talking about.
That's a race condition, right? And first reading it and then writing is not going to preserve it. So the only thing that will work is an atomic insert with the condition that this cannot exist yet.
Okay. And
DynamoDB does support that, but it's an additional parameter on this call, put item operation config. And there you can give it conditions that you need to be true for this operation to be carried out successfully.
Okay.
So that notation is just really weird.
So what I hear is we're going to create a GitHub issue for that and come back to it later.
Exactly, yes. Okay. For now, we're going to have a race condition.
Okay.
And the
watch all kinds of people out there.
And the primary key, let's just take from the request, the account. Oh, gee, I can't access the fields in the request object. Did you push your changes? Or do you want me to make them public and then deal with the merge conflict later?
I can.
I mean, do you need it yet? Otherwise, I can do it on my side and push it from here.
I can push it real quick. It's not that big a deal.
Well, that will add me to add another new folder. Oops, not that.
Of course, I say it's not that big of a deal, and yeah, I got to figure out how to use this new client. Like I've used source tree for years and years, and now I'm like purposely trying to change things up live. Did I maybe not save it?
Okay, where was it? Okay, this is services, and then there was I think it was called abstractions. Oh. Well, for now, just unblock. Maybe I'm gonna make them public because they should have been in the first place, obviously. Okay, public. Great. So this should work a little bit.
I guess I'll deal with the merge conflict later. Because why not?
Okay. What do you want your primary key to be? The email or the username? What is ultimately the identifier? You said username, right?
Username seems to be what the app is actually using.
Okay, so it's username. Okay, and then the sort key, I'm just going to call it account. So that way, when I look for this username and the sort key, the specific string account, I'm going to have an exact one-to-one match on it. So that's kind of like, and then when you create moments for this username, I can still use as primary key the username and then do something like moment dash and a date. And then I can find within a date range all the moments that this user has created. So that's kind of like how you use DynamoDB to map multiple entities into a single table. It's a pretty sweet mechanism.
That's kind of hurting my brain a little bit, thinking so much from like a SQL type background and how you can do like these really crazy object type things with the NoSQL stuff. Like, I'm just,
Yeah, that's something that I really only learned this year, is how you actually do this. In the past, when I used DynamoDB, I would create multiple table, one per entity, not knowing better.
Yeah.
That's not the way to do it. This is really, one DynamoDB table can contain quite a few, but it does require some careful mapping exercises.
Okay. So it's not exactly like my junk drawer at home that I just throw everything into. Like it should be ordered, unlike the junk drawer.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and not just that. You need to have kind of like rules of engagement set up front of kind of how you want to get things.
Okay.
And if you want to do some more complicated queries, you may have to create some additional global indices that allow you to access the data with separate set of keys. I don't think we'll need it here because the data model is fairly easy.
Okay.
So that's why I figured I'd give it a shot.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okie dokie. So I should be able to just deploy this again. And this will happily now insert a record into the table. When I submit something to it. Okay, so I'm going to push some of these changes up. I'm just going to push everything up. So fixed account registration request.
Oh, that's how I get to stage files. Okay.
Push. So much more used to the command line, but it was busy deploying my changes. So the next thing is with CloudFormation, it will only do the updates that it needs to do. So assuming that I don't have any typos or made other mistakes in the definition of my resources, I should create the table now. And then when that's created, it updates the other resources. And a lot of the things it created earlier haven't changed.
Okay.
For example, the API gateway itself, I haven't added a new Crud endpoint. I haven't added new data models. So those things should be fairly easy.
Okay.
And should just be skipped altogether because no changes were present.
Sure.
All right, well, the table was created, so that seems to be good. And we can see kind of the update going along in here. If I go here and look at the events, we see update in progress. So the function is being updated because I'm now passing in the actual physical name of the DynamoDB table into the function so I can access it during initialization. And okay, we're done. Yeah. So update is finished. Resources have been updated and need to be updated. Everything else has been skipped. So that seems good to go. So how are you doing on your side?
Well, I was kind of waiting on a couple things here, but
So I just pushed my changes.
yep. So I actually just pulled your changes. I'm going to do a git push here.
Okay. And I'm going to quickly copy the API gateway URL. I don't know if I want to be getting publicly broadcast quite just yet.
So let me kind of bring
API gateway.
some of this up.
And put that into Postman. Boom. Here we go.
Okay, so we have that. So let's see if I've recovered. So this is a brand new computer, and
Yeah, you mentioned earlier. So I remember when I was asking you, I saw there was a VS Code update pending. You're like, should I update VS Code just like hours before we're trying to do this?
so amusingly, I can build just fine on the PC. This is Parallels running Visual Studio, and so far I'm having nothing but terrible times trying that. So we'll see if we can resolve that. I may try to switch IDEs over to VS for Mac here in a minute. But yes, what could possibly go wrong?
Nothing.
Okay. The build is still failing.
Okay, so
I don't know why. So I'm just wondering. It might be the Android X stuff I did last time, but it was working on my other machine. This is just like a whole new definition to it works on my machine. It works on that machine of mine, but not this one. Go figure.
yeah, that's how it is. Okay, so what did we say about registration?
Let's see here. So we'll show a little bit of magic going on here. So I'm going to do something, of course, that is not dangerous at all, and update some packages here. So let's update that.
Okay, and I'm creating a definition right now for...
Possibly go wrong with that.
Oh, cool, they support now GraphQL. That's cool. Okay, so what I did, I account, an account object. An account object has a username, Bob, and an email, bob@example.org. And then we have also a user record. That's your screen.
Let's see, I think we were on a preview version of Xamarin Forms.
Okay, name.
Yes, we are. So let me try.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like I need much there. Okay.
Let me try to see how far I can get in Visual Studio without it going unresponsive. I think that's the real trick. We have preview 3 here, so let's update that. Okay. Let's see. Okay. I'm hoping that will work. So this is actually the really fun part is I hit build and it builds just fine. MS Build goes, oh, nope, everything is good. All the projects built, no errors. I try to deploy it to the device and, oh, you have 74 errors.
Yep. Isn't that the truth?
All right.
Okay, so what is it?
Building.
No.
Let's see here.
And of course, my thing to do it does best, and decided it didn't like what I just sent it. Unless I sent it to the wrong endpoint. What do we have? Registration? What do I use? Registrations?
Yeah.
Registration. No.
Okay. This is still building.
No way.
Still building, yes. It's the sort of thing that, you know, and I normally can't do this working remotely from the home office, but since we're here, you know, it is something where it's like if you had a couple of swords, we could do like a little sword fighting while we wait.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that working.
Deploying. I don't want a rate visor. Okay. It's going to come up.
Oh, wait. Do I have to actually explicitly say that it's a null? Maybe that's what it is.
Those aren't the official.
These are not the droids you're looking for?
Yeah, they're not the droids we're looking for.
Oh.
Okay. We'll share again. A system type load exception. vtable.
Oh.
View details. Well, isn't this fun? where did we actually throw an exception? The inner exception is null. Okay. Prism application, line 25, base initialize internal. Well, that's weird. Line 23.
That's fascinating. How about this? Okay, so it doesn't like the account object.
Okay, so let's go over to GitHub and this assumes, of course, I can figure out where my there. Go to Prism library. So let's look at Prism application base. So as we're looking at this exception, so in our stack trace we said Prism application base 75 and then 84, 130, okay. Oh, actually, this is useful. What is that line? Okay, so actually, that's very specific to Android. So I guess what we want to do, actually, GitHub, go to Dan Siegel, Prism container extensions. So now if we come in here and look in Android, what was the line number that it was saying? Line 28. Oh, that's just the base initialize. Okay.
Oh, I was wondering, why is it not accepting the payload I'm sending it?
You should, yeah, hold on.
No,
I'm gonna stop sharing so you can share that one. Yeah, no, you got to share that one. That's too funny.
I was like, why is my schema validation not working? So API gateway, so I was tying it out in Postman, and you can see like my various failed attempts. So eventually I just say, okay, you know what? I'm just gonna send null.
And of course that passed.
Well, yes, by the internal error, because remember I have account dot request dot account dot username. That well, it's null, so it's not gonna do anything. So then I tried to initialize it, with various fields, and I tried nulls, and just nothing works. Like, what's going on? Why is it not accepting when I give it the payload? Well, I guess I was a little bit fast on this. So when I added the JSON property, I gave the label user to the account object and the label account to the user object. So of course the shapes are not going to line up unless both fields are null. And then it's perfectly happy. So yes, always read the code you're typing. So I guess the takeaway from that. So back to you.
All right. So let's see here. So we said 130. Prism application 25. Yeah, so 130. And the create container extension, that's very strange. I guess that would make sense if I had started at the top instead of the bottom. So let me do this. I guess I should start sharing again, actually, for one.
Oh, was it in the...
So let's see. So if we come in here, we have our init. So I'm just going to say prism container extension dot current. Wow. That should initialize it. Or I can actually just say create. And let's try that. Don't know why it would have been a little upset, but this whole machine is upset at me. Well, I can understand why. It only has USB-C. Because, you know, that's the only thing that you need. Even though you can't get a USB-C hub. I'm not bitter at all, really.
No, it doesn't. Barely noticeable. Okay, condition expression. Here we go. Trying to figure out how to do this conditional thing. I don't think we're going to get very far in general. That not exists. Okay.
A vtable setup. What? This is very strange. I mean, I suppose I can try installing it directly there. I don't know if that will make a difference. Get the container-specific package. You know, this is the fun part with cross-platform. See, you only have one platform you got to worry about.
Yeah,
it's
multiple
easy.
platforms means issues on multiple environments. Okay, I think my stuff is starting to hobble along.
Well, let's take a look at your stuff.
Okay.
Because that might be more interesting.
This might be famous last words, you know, it's like, hey, look, it's working. Nope. Okay, so I just resent this request after updating the definitions.
Okay.
And it came back with an empty object, which is, you know, since our response doesn't contain anything, pretty much the only thing I could respond with. So now let's go, oops. Oh, the other thing I added is I added this constraint into the code, but I haven't deployed it yet. So the current version should just succeed every single time by putting an item again and again. Yeah. So let's see. Let's go to our DynamoDB tables here. Dynamo.
So it sounds like my default implementation of, you know, return task from true. Every time.
Every time.
Every time. It's true. It's true. I logged in.
Okay, so this is the table we created, and so we should see the items here. And yep, so this is Bob. The sort key is this, and I don't think I added any other columns. So, so we know our Lambda code is working, and it's inserting and overriding the same record over and over again. So the next thing I'm going to do is I did add the thing here. Figure, okay, let's give it a shot. So this has now a constraint, and my expectations are the constraint says that this attribute should not exist, the primary key. So only put this item into this row if PK doesn't exist, which basically implies that the row doesn't exist. It's not yet taken. So once I deploy this, we should only be able to do this operation once. So the second time I'm going to do it now, it's going to fail with using the same username. So let's build it, let's upload it.
Okay.
So this is all taken care of first. There was a slight code change, so that means that the Lambda function will be updated. What's really cool, you know, in .NET Core, it came in, I think in .NET Framework later on, is the deterministic builds. And the cool thing about it is that you can actually do hashes of your build binaries now. and they will not change if your code hasn't changed. Now, it's very delicate. I mean, if you add like an empty line in your code, it will change because your PDB information changes. But in general, like if I were just to just build this now again, I mean, I have to go through the whole build phase and so on, because at the source code level, I can't necessarily detect that there weren't any changes. But the Lambda package is a fully self-contained zip with all your dependencies, all your build binaries and all the dependencies that it depends on. And so I just ran it again, told CloudFormation to update, and bam, it says no stack update required because the hashes tend to be the same, and so nothing to do. So I think that's kind of a nice feature and taking advantage of deterministic builds. Okay, so now I've sent this again. It takes a couple of seconds because of the cold start, and I should get an exception because I'm inserting the same record. Let's see if that happens or if we get success. Oh, internal error. See log for details. Okay, let's change the name to Bob2. Hit send again, and bam. Okay, so we have uniqueness constraint now. So if I send Bob2 again, I get internal error. Of course, internal errors, we can do a better job than that in returning, but I'll take it for now. So that's all we had to do was just add this constraint.
Okay.
And this ensures that we only insert this once.
Okay.
So this takes care effectively of these two comments. I'll add a little to-do saying that, hey, to-do, better exception handling. Now, if we wanted to see what the error actually was, we can go into our console here. I usually like to go in from our CloudFormation perspective. This is where the entire stack is defined. Resources, go down to the moments function. Where is it, moments function? Where's my function? Moments function, here we go. Go here. This opens the definition here. Now we can go to monitoring and view CloudWatch logs. And so what I expect to see here is effectively the name of the exception that was thrown. So we see the initialization of the function, and then we have here a Lambda error, and its response code. So if we go further down, we should see what condition check failed exception. So we add now a catch on this. We know why it failed. It was because of the condition. Catch, boom. Yes, add the model. Check these guys, moves it in here. And in this case, we probably want to throw abort bad request and a message account is already registered. Okay, so this should give us a little bit nicer error. So let's can also remove this and redeploy. So of course, there's absolutely no API key on this API, which effectively means that it's publicly exposed. Anyone can go in and just create as many accounts as they like all day long.
Is that supposed to be bad?
Yeah, no, that's bad, yes.
Oh. Oh, okay.
Okay, so it's updating the stack with the new code. Table will not be updated. We didn't change anything there. Any related assets have been uploaded. Okie dokie. So let's see. So now if I do this again, I should get something a little bit more descriptive. Bob2. Cold start, waiting. Account is already registered. So now I get a 400 bad request response and an error message as to why the request was denied.
Okay.
So it's a little bit more descriptive. This account already exists. Sorry, pick a different name. Will be the same here.
It's like,
and then if I say Bob3,
you're not the brightest person. Done. That's why it doesn't work.
Well, I mean, somebody else would grab your favorite, username and
story of my life. I mean, you know why my username on everything is Dan Siegel, except on Twitter where I had to put my middle initial?
Oh, I noticed because there's another Dan Siegel. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. That was my first attempt. I was like, oh, let me quickly look up this Twitter account and say, like, who's this guy? Like, wait a second.
Or there's my domain. I had to go with .net because apparently there was another Dan Siegel that wanted the .com. He doesn't use it for anything and won't sell it either, you know?
Sweet.
Go figure. Only been trying for over a decade. I'm not bitter about it at all.
You don't sound like it. Okay, so username, let's see, account. So one thing that when we defined this payload, the account payload, we didn't say what was absolutely needed in it. So I think the username needs to be, we need to add the JSON required property on it, which basically allows to enforce that whenever the account is being sent, you have to have a username.
Yes.
It also sounds like we should probably make the password required because that's how we know that this username and this password, you're allowed to take this action.
Sure.
I mean, an alternative would be that when you sign in, you get a token back, and then you can use that token for
that
something.
would be smarter. Yes.
It would be a little bit nicer, but ultimately, for every request, you could be sending your username and your password. That would be an alternative. So let's see how far we get by making it required.
Basic authentication or something.
We also know that we're going to need an email to make sure the same user, and then user ID seems to be not that practically useful, so I'm just going to ignore it.
I mean, personally, I love basic authentication. It's base64 encoded, so you don't really have to worry about encryption. It's very simple, and you should always use HTTP.
Absolutely,
So,
port 80 all the way.
Yes.
If you have to use encryption, don't go beyond TLS 1.0.
Yes.
Never.
Yes. No, it's overkill. It's overkill.
No, it's exactly.
You know. Watch, there are people out there that think we're serious right now.
I hope not. Don't do that.
It's a terrible idea.
Okay, so all I did right now is I added the JSON required attributes to the, I think, 3 fields. The username, the password, and the email. So whenever you do a request with the account, those 3 need to be present, otherwise you will get rejected. Now, let's see, has it updated? Nope, it's still in process. So the model was changed because if you look at now the request model, it says that certain fields are required, they no longer be nullable. The function has changed. And because the request model has changed, we need to update API gateway, which has been taken care of as well.
Okay.
And now it's being published. So for public access, and the old deployment is being deleted automatically. Boom. We are good. So now if I go into Postman and I create a perfectly valid request, this one will not even get to our code because API Gateway will have shut it down because we didn't provide a password.
Okay.
So the only way I can now go in is by actually saying, sending my favorite password. What's your favorite password?
Well, I like to do password, but I use like the @ symbol for the A, and then like 5s for the S's.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So close to what I use. I usually do $signs.
True story. Yeah, a guy I used to work with, he actually did something like that. It might have actually been the $signs for the S's, and he was just spinning up like a test VM to like make sure like the new distribution of, I think it was like Ubuntu, would work in the hypervisor and everything. And then we got called into a meeting all afternoon because those never happen in large companies. And next thing you know, it's now 7 o'clock in the evening. We've been there since 6 in the morning. We want to go home. So nobody is thinking about this test VM that got spun up in the middle of the day. So we all go home, and about an hour later, we get a phone call from the network operations team that, hey, somebody hacked into your VM, and they're now DDoSing someone at 30 gigabit.
Oh, no. Oh, that's terrible.
We were actually quite impressed because that VM had 1 core and 1 gig of RAM.
That is funny. Okay, so I just repeated the request that just moments ago was completely denied because I hadn't provided passwords. I've put in password. And of course, it came back now with account is already registered, which is exactly what we want to see. So valid payload.
Okay.
And this is all just debugging, so I can get rid of this. Apparently, the user object is also not something that is absolutely mandatory. So if I send this, it should be going through, and I get back my account is already registered. Okay, so I'm not storing anything in DynamoDB. I'm really just creating, I'm using username as a primary key. Sort key is hard-coded to account. And we basically are not storing the password or the email at all. So I think that's probably something we should rectify, I would imagine. Maybe.
Yeah, I would think that might be important. We do need the user. Are you storing the user information or not yet?
Not yet, because
Okay.
it's optional. But what was it? It was the one was okay. Let's see.
Because we probably want to make that required.
The name and the profile image. Well, profile image. I mean, that's you provide a gravatar. I mean, it defaults, right? I mean, you have a default technically.
Well,
Now the gravatar is being set by you, which is a little bit odd. When you register, it's kind of, I mean, I feel the server may not have to be that smart. But yes, I mean, we can make the requirement.
Technically, we could just make the entire contract the account, and who cares about the user, because you'll pass that user back to me anyway.
Yep. Okay, so that should definitely not null, but okay. Gotta love the new question mark dot operator, right?
Yes, I do love that.
This is
For
like
sure.
exactly, perfectly profile image. Okay, profile image equal request. User, which could be null. Oh, can't wait for .NET Core 2.0 with null
nice.
type checks,
Yes.
nullable types.
I'm definitely looking forward to
neat.
that.
Okay, and then we need the password. For now, I'm just gonna in plain text. Like,
So
yeah,
I'm sitting
text
here
for the
trying to
win.
figure out how to rectify this type load exception. This is very interesting
Request
that I'm
account
getting here.
dot email. Okay, so that's gonna possibly stand for that. So let's define the local functions. SHA-256, right? Or
Yeah, base 64. Come on. All right.
there we go.
So we're getting the vtable from both IDEs. We're getting.
Okay. Oops. String.
See if anyone in chat is actually paying attention.
String password.
You're trying to buy the Twitter. No, I have not tried buying the Twitter handle, by the way. There was a question in chat.
Okay. Yes. No. I mean, that's. I haven't looked at how many followers that guy has.
I don't know.
Single. Not sure it's super important.
Hold on.
I
Would
hate-
that be like buying, like if he has more, does that mean I'd be like buying followers?
I'm just gonna do the whatever DevOps does. This is how you save yourself always from agonizing how an API works.
Well, I
You
don't
just
even
put
know
it
why I
to
would want to
Google.
buy this. He has 0 followers and he's not following anyone. That's like a boring account.
There has to be a Stack Overflow answer for this. Stack Overflow. How to kill a proper one? It's not going. C# hash .256.
So if anyone in chat has seen this type load exception with a vtable lookup or something, let me know what you did to rectify that while I look on Stack Overflow and see if anyone answered that.
This is like, I just found some nice code that seems to be getting me a little bit closer to what I'm looking for. Okay, those are the bytes.
I keep saying, oh, well, I copied the code into another project and it worked.
Oh,
I'm like, well, that doesn't tell me how to fix the
Okay,
problem.
Coding, raw data, get bytes, that's the password. Okay, so
vtable
now I
setup.
have bytes. Oops. And now I can say bytes, select. No. No. ToString x2. Here's another one of my favorite tools called.
So let's see. I'm
Have you
banging
seen
my head.
C# REPL? This little guy.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I know Mono has a version that you can technically run locally, but I don't think .NET has added it yet, right?
Well, there's like because like Mono came out with like the whole workbooks thing, and they were working on that for for the web, and they were going to do it for like all the Microsoft Docs and everything. And then, as is typically the case with the team, there was a squirrel that diverted their attention to another, you know, something or other, 8 or 12,000. You know how that goes. And so they stopped pushing that, I guess. I don't know.
Oh wait, no, let's. Yeah, I forget the select x2 string. Oh, I can just validate that I'm doing it right before. Okay, so that's an enumerable.
A mismatch in my versions.
And now I need to join this guy.
Make sure all of my assemblies are compiled for .NET 4.
Boom. Okay, basically I don't know how to write code. Got it. What's new? Blah blah, line 6.
Do I have Xamarin Forms versions different between projects? I don't think I do, but let me look.
There we go. Oh,
You know, I thought I had.
So this is what we want to do. For getting a string back.
Let me see here.
Return from. Yes, we need link.
No,
Okay, I haven't found a better way of doing an easy hex to hex string. So
okay.
SHA compute hash obviously gives me back the hash of the bytes I gave it.
Oh, to a hex string?
Yeah.
I just did that.
I mean, there is a bit converter, but it adds dashes in between.
So you're going from what, like a
byte array?
A byte array.
So the best I've found so far is you say select, and then x2 string x2, which is basically formatted as a hexadecimal character, this byte, using 2 characters.
Yeah.
And then concatenate all of them.
Yeah, basically.
I mean, it does the right thing. It's not necessarily the most efficient. I mean, I know exactly how much memory I need to allocate. I mean, I used to do C programming. This has never been, you would never do this like this. I just haven't, I don't know why there isn't a simple byte array to hex string. You know, memory efficient, does it in a single pass, doesn't require, you know, like reallocating things.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's a great question.
Okay, we'll leave that for another day. Okay.
You can do it the inefficient way. That's how we do it anyway.
And you know what? I'm going to need this more than once, so I'm going to take this out from a local function and make it a private function I can use again.
So this is where everyone is going to be laughing at me because, you know, I was asking about how can you share your code between like the Mac side and then the Windows side.
Yep. You don't have a shared drive?
Well, with Parallels, apparently they give you a couple of shares, and so like it automatically mapped it. So I have that, but what everyone said was, yeah, you got to delete bin and obj every time from all of your.
Oh yeah, you know that's quite true. When I use the Linux subshell,
yeah,
and I recompile it, so sometimes when I try to figure out why it's not quite compiling as expected on Ubuntu,
yeah,
the way it compiles on the Windows, I go into the same folder, and then afterwards, because my code session is always you know, my Windows side,
yeah,
it just goes bonkers because suddenly bin and object folder just contains something. It's like, what is this?
Yeah, like why are you doing this to me?
Yeah. Maybe
you know, it'd be fantastic
if
the IDE teams, because they're sharing a lot more now with Visual Studio and Visual Studio for Mac. So it'd be great if the teams could actually kind of come together and kind of get some of that sorted out. Oh, actually, you know what? I think that might be it.
And I'm going to nuke the rows I created earlier.
So let me.
Oops, no, that's not it. Trying to find the right window here. Boom. Okay, Dynamo. Table. Okay, and actions delete item.
So apparently, just because I said update doesn't mean it actually took. Lovely.
Yeah, well, so this new version of the API should now be able to uniquely register an account and user with optional display name and profile image.
Okay.
Those will be null if they're not supplied. and hash the password. So
Well, I mean,
it's doing a whole bunch of things.
If you require the email, you could just generate the Gravatar on the server side.
Yes, but then I need the NuGet package also there.
A NuGet package for what?
For Gravatar.
It's not. It's
yeah,
really not
I
that
can
hard.
look at you, right? I mean,
it's a really simple API call.
True.
So, and you don't even actually need
to be somebody else's problem rather than mine.
What?
Let's be honest. Okay, here, check this out. So this got inserted.
I've written the code like 10 times.
So primary key is Bob, which is your login name.
Okay.
You know, sort key, as I said, is hard-coded to be account, so
Sure.
we can easily find it, single hit. Your email is bob@example.org, and your password is hashed. And your profile image is null, and your, wait a second, where's profile image null? Where's name? Our name is here, okay. So we're good. So everything got stored we wanted to store. It was there, and so you should be able to have your client registered now.
Well, I'll have to try that. We'll see if this latest thing made it to where I can actually build.
So I guess we never made anything of the response, so I'll just clear that out. So, okay. Okay, I took a couple of shortcuts here. Using an anonymous object. Maybe I'll promote this to an actual record. So, public class account record. Properties. Okay, all of these guys.
So okay, all your problems.
Come on. Ugh. What are you doing? Fat fingering everything here. Oh, that's just fantastic. I copy pasted a typo. No! Stop multi-selection. Okay. Let's try that again. Just a little slow. Public string. These guys are all strings, so I get set. Okie dokie. And then now I should just be able to say account record. Account record.
Now, with any luck, this will actually build this time.
And since we know everything needs to have an account record, abstract class record, properties, pk equal account.
Since we're deploying,
record. A stands for abstract. That's why it's with an A at the beginning. In case we know, why is it a record? Abstract record. I've tried this for a while, and this has worked out really well in practice. So I don't need this because I will initialize it for me. Perfect. Actually, I really could make this. This never needs to be set. It's always going to be account. Okay. And then PK needs to be set.
we're still getting that vtable thing.
Okay, let's quickly deploying. Make sure that I didn't bust everything in my code. So apparently this is not needed. Weird. How is that not needed? I mean, in what namespace did I put this guy in? Namespace moments. Weird. Okay, I'm just not going to trust VS Code on this.
You should never trust VS Code.
Oh yeah, that's just it's one of those wisdoms in life. Things I learned today. Don't trust VS Code. Don't trust OmniSharp in VS Code.
I just don't trust the IDE. Period. Doesn't matter which one.
Update has been published. Let's go back to Postman. Actually, let me just nuke this row as well. And this should just work just as well as before.
Actually, here, let me Close that again.
Boom.
So got PowerShell.
Oh. Okay, so what's the next interface then?
So we have our account.
We have registration. Yes,
Okay.
unique registration, atomic operation, insertion of an account, row. It inserts the name and the profile image. If supplied, it doesn't make them required currently. I can certainly change that. It hashes the password, and
Okay.
it doesn't return anything, which is still really weird.
So we have the.
It's not very. I mean, it's like this is not hypertext.
You had the
RESTful
registration, and then you had the login. You said too, right? So are you returning anything on?
No, there's no login yet.
Oh, there's no login.
No.
So we need a login.
The registration, yeah. So what does the login send again?
The username and password.
The account. In other words, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'll take a stab at implementing that. For now, let me quickly check what my changes here.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I can tell, anytime we're using the account, we're always returning a user, or we're always expecting a username and password property to be there.
So should the email only be required when you create the account, but not when you log in?
Correct.
Okay, so that I need to change that. So I'll make. Ultimately, then the email is really optional.
Yes.
Okay, so I remove the requirement.
Well,
for that.
I mean, I would say at registration it's required, but in general, as like a JSON.NET property, it would be optional.
Okay. So.
Which there are
That is
some.
fascinating. So basically, I have to.
I think there might be some purists out there that say that that's actually the wrong way to do it, and it should be a different model. But yeah, I'm lazy and I'm not going to do that.
Okay, for now, boom. Just a time check. I mean, we're running on to the 2-hour mark.
I think so. We can go a little bit longer here. Let's try to at least get a login flow going, and we can come back and do some of the image processing stuff another time.
Sounds good. Okay, so let's see. I'm just going to be lazy. I'm going to add the. Do we have a definition for what? Oh, hold on. Before I do that, let me commit my changes before I launch myself into the next venture.
Of course, this assumes I can actually get the mobile app running today.
Okay, that was my city fix. User just added these guys. Okay. Added registration. Account registration there. Push.
Seems like our audience is like pushed back, so we don't hear her.
The room audience, yes. Okay, so where is? How did they implement?
I think the best part of that is since she's watching the stream,
It takes like a minute.
you know, you get the delay, so we can sit here and make fun of her, and she doesn't know it. And then like 20 seconds later, she starts busting up laughing.
Okay, so login, I guess, needs to return then some metadata, right?
Yeah.
We're doing that. Okay, so public class login request. Public class login response. I'm just going to put it in here so since those are my classes, they're going to be formatted my way. So it's really just this guy coming in. Boom. And then login response. This has to be required. JSON.
Sometimes I feel like I should just not update things at all.
Yes, no, I know the feeling. Okay, this is a string. Oops.
So
Public.
I stupidly updated, and now I cannot make this thing run.
Token. So it's basically like a session token, right? That you're getting back when you log in.
I feel like we should do a session token.
Right, because that's what you're going to keep sending over and over again in order to do subsequent. So you log in, you give me your username, password. I validate that it matches what I have on record.
Correct.
And now I send you back something that effectively contains the username, password in an encrypted fashion that I can decrypt again.
Yes.
And okay, easy breezy.
So, and the way I would do that, so, and this is where you kind of get like an advanced registration type thing where I might just have that account service hold on to that and create a new interface for that. So that way it implements the account service and the other service, and I can register that with DI where it returns that singleton for either one.
Singleton.
Yes.
Oh yeah, well you're thinking about client side.
I'm thinking client side,
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
So that way...
I'm thinking multi-tenant and
that way it just simplifies it, because
Singleton?
everything else doesn't need to care about
correct.
what we're doing. Like,
yeah,
all we care about is this token. How do we get the token?
I mean,
So and that's beautiful.
Static
So it's nice and be nice and transparent there.
Okay.
So let me
Boom.
discard that.
So I'm just okay. So now I need to add a new endpoint, and here API post login.
So
invoke login. All right, that's all I needed to do at the CloudFormation level. That will take care of everything. And I need to now provide an actual method that it can link against. And this will be
Holy moly.
logging response. Oops, response.
I really hate when
Login
Visual Studio has to be smart and
It
reformats your entire CS proj. So it's like, you just want to undo one change, and you're like, it redid the entire file.
That sounds very unfortunate, yes. Okay. Okay, so this is going to be interesting. I think what I want to do is an await table get. Oh, come on. Get item error. Fat fingering everything.
Don't worry, I've never done that.
New get item. Can I do it? Get item configuration, and can I now make it a conditional? No, consistent read. Shoot. That's so on put I can do it, but not on get. Okay. So just get it. It's gonna have to be something similar like here, except it's considerably simpler because we have a username, we have the password. Well, the password is actually not needed. So we just a password. So I can just take this variable. Okay, so that should give me now var row. If the row is 0, if row or record is null, so abort not found, thing invalid, username, password, password. Okay, so we're gonna okay. Oh, I didn't change this record. So either the record is null, or the password doesn't match, right? Either way, we are going to have this exact same error, so people cannot tell the difference between invalid username and password. So all record. Oh wait, yeah, okay, but I'll be able to do it in one because I have to. Okay, so this is actually a document. Let's see, what's the type of this coming back? Document, yeah. Which is null, then blah, otherwise. Change that quickly here. document, so the thing, var record is deserialize JSON, and then document to JSON. And we need to give it a type. And that would be, what is it, account record? Account record? Yeah, boom. Okay, if record.password doesn't match hash text of request.password, then we saw the exact same exception. Boom. Account. And okay, let's see. Where's my? This isn't required, so I don't have to check that it's no. I mean, I could, but it's really not important. I mean, this guy, if this guy is no, it's not going to be happy either. So, okay, so I tried to fetch the document. If I can't find it, then invalid username or password. If I did find it, but the password doesn't match, then also invalid username or password. So now I need to generate a response with the encoded information of the record that was actually used. So that is new login response. Whoops, response. And the session token, I'm just going to make my life really easy and call the encrypt secret async function. So this uses the AWS KMS capabilities for encrypting secrets using a KMS key.
Okay.
In this version of LambdaSharp, a default one is being created for you. The next version, you actually have to explicitly supply one. There's some reason so that you can control the lifetime of secrets being encrypted with it. It being created for you means that it will also be destroyed when you tear it down. That can have negative impacts if you wanted to like just recreate something. Okay. So, but other than that, it's the exact same mechanism. So we have one effectively included for right now. And so I can just tell it what I want to send back. And that is, as lame as it sounds, it's really just the username. It's really, the username is your, oops, okay. Your session token, the encrypted username. So when I get it, I can just decrypt it. I can use it as my primary key, and I can find the account information right away.
Okay, so it's not going to be like a JWT. It's just an encrypted username.
Yeah.
It's
yeah, it's not. You know, it's not. This is. But it's not like you can encrypt it. It's not like somebody can send me a fake one unless they somehow compromised. Yes, yeah. Compromised my encryption key.
Well, and since you're not even really handling it, they would have had to compromise AWS.
Yes, correct. So
which
AWS
hardly seems doable.
I'm sure somebody's out there trying to do it right now.
I'm sure they probably have.
Hopefully they're not successful, but they will add entropy and all kinds of things. So even though you may know what it is, it's going to be incredibly hard for you to figure out now. So I'm not going to bother about adding my own entropy at the beginning and, and anything like that. You know, the funny thing is, I think I was in the middle of actually trying to commit my previous changes. Did I ever do that? Oh, yeah, I did do that. Okay, good. Let's go back to the update. So it's creating now a new request model. Oh, no, that was the other one. Registration resource was updated. Login resource, request model, response model is being created. The function has been updated with the new code. And so in this case, I'm using a single function to kind of like handle everything. And because C# functions tend to be a little heavier, I mean, if you were using JavaScript, you might, or Python, where the runtimes are a little bit lighter, you might opt with having a different function for everything that you do. Okay. Because C# you want to utilize that warm start or warm functions, I found it more beneficial to kind of combine more functionality in a single function. You shouldn't make it a monolith by any means, but this has worked out pretty well for me. Now, API Gateway also allows providing a custom Lambda function for authorization, for making sure that you're allowed to use this endpoint. So that would be something cool to do in a follow-up session, is actually have, instead of every time you send me a request that I would kind of like validate that the token matches something that I have and therefore you're allowed to do it, I would attach it to the API endpoint itself, and it would be API Gateway that would invoke the Lambda function, validate this, and then cache the result for some period of time so that you're allowed to actually do the interactions.
So rather than, so you would still have some sort of lookup in your own.
But in the authorizer, and I can reuse that across all the CRUD endpoints. So instead of then having every CRUD endpoint have the
you don't have to explicitly call it.
Yes. So I know that at that point, if my business logic gets invoked at the end of the CRUD endpoint, I don't have to do any validation. I know I can trust that you're Bob and that I can do this lookup and can attach it to it, because I know you would never have gotten this far otherwise.
And in doing that, you could somehow store state to know, like, from the authorized function to whatever the next function is. Like, if you wanted to have that user object hot and ready to go, you could do that as well? Or
well, API Gateway is smart enough that it will not call the authorizer continuously. It actually will cache that result for a while, knowing who you are. So not sure how it does that exactly. Maybe it might pass it back a cookie or something. I haven't used it in the past. Or maybe if it's just this information coming in that it's expected to be forwarding to the authorizer, it does a caching mechanism around it, expecting it to be idempotent, obviously. But then you don't have to have the authorization logic in your business logic. That's the whole benefit. I think there's something in ASP.NET Core, I don't have too much experience with it, where you kind of like separate your authorization code away from your business logic.
Sure.
So that would get invoked first.
And some sort of middleware or something.
It's kind of like a gateway, right? I mean, it's if that gate has been passed, then you know that these checks must have been valid. And it will manage that for you. Okay, I just wanted to make sure the account has been created. So now I need to create a new, add request. And so this would be the login request. This Moments API. And so this is also a post. API URL, and this should be login. Okay, the header is content type. If you don't set that properly, also API Gateway will automatically reject it. And so now let me take this fella. It's very similar, except we don't have to pass in the password now. We just have to say this. So if fingers crossed. I should be getting back something with session token. Session token, boom. And this is basically your encrypted username. Okay. So that's working as well now.
That's a long username.
Well, lots of entropy. Lots of entropy and some encryption, and that's what you end up with.
Okay.
So if I send it again, I should be getting a different string back.
It's a good thing that you did this with the username of Bob. You know, I mean, I could only imagine, like. Can you just see it now? Like you have someone someone with a Latin name, where it's like, you know how they are with like 12 different names for their name, and it's like that's their username that they've.
I think it would have to be pretty long before it gets longer than this string. You know what? Something we haven't put in is, of course, a constraint that here you can create an account with an empty username.
Yeah.
Things like that. I mean, I'm sure that's. Do you have a preference for minimum length for username? I mean, there are people who have literal. I mean, whose name is 2 letters long. I mean, that's.
Yeah, it's like, you like Woo. I think, you know, the W-U.
Woo. She, right? She.
Yeah, there. Seems like I don't know why the ones that keep coming to mind that are really short tend to be like from Asia.
Yes. Does it matter if they come from Africa?
I don't know. Like I'm just trying to think. Where else? Like who else? Like what are some?
Yeah, might have some Danes with short names. Okay.
I just want people to think I'm like picking on them. Like, that's all I can think of right now, though.
Okay. So this looks pretty good. So I'll just add that as well. Okay. So this was the only change we had to do in order to add a new endpoint that would automatically do a validation of our requests and forward that request into a specific entry point.
Okay.
I've added that code also. I'm just doing kind of a quick code review with myself. Added that. So this was the new check that we cannot register somebody whose name is too short. It's written in 2 letters. So if you have a name with just 1 letter, I apologize. You will be rejected.
Well, that's an initial. That's not a name, you know?
Maybe your name is O.
I guess it depends on what we're using, right? Because you know, if you have something like that, some of the different languages out there where they have like it's more like it's different characters. So it looks like 1 character, but it could be like your whole name.
Oh, yes.
Because I know
Like
when
the more constructive languages, like Chinese?
Yeah, so I know when the Samsung Tizen team came out for Xamarin Developer Summit, they gave me a stamp with my name in Korean, and it's just a block, but it's my whole name. It's pretty interesting.
Cool. So it works. I send username with password.
Okay.
And that was rejected. Username foo.
Okay.
So now let's send Bob, but with the wrong password.
Okay.
And that should also be rejected. Yep, invalid username or password. So it's doing nicely what we wanted to do. Yeah, unit test would probably be nice on this, and that will require the code organization to be a little bit different, but...
Unit test, come on now. Who really is testing their code? I always test my code in production.
It's the only place where it counts, right? Okay, added login endpoint. Login, yeah. Okay, push.
Okay, so in order to contact the API,
I've been pushing for a while because I did a git pull first, and now I'm probably going to have like merge configs and all kinds of junk.
Okay, so to do this, what do I need configuration-wise? I need the URL, right? So
yep, you need and technically an API key. For now, that's not used. You may probably also make this public as well.
Okay.
Just those properties, or is it an interface? Oh yeah,
it's just an interface for right now.
Okay, so my changes are published. It's looking good. Okay, so do you want to share?
Yeah, I can share. On the bright side, I finally got this thing building.
Sweet.
If anyone from the Xamarin team is watching, Pre-3 broke me. So Pre-2 works fine. Pre-3 does not work at all. Go figure. All right, so I'm going to kind of implement a dummy class here. So actually, AWS config here. I've got my IAWS config. Actually, it just occurred to me I probably should have edited my secrets before I did this, but that's okay. We'll just leave it like that, and I can come back later. So I will now register that in the app. Let me actually increase my font here, because I made it easier on me while I was not sharing. Mr. Singleton, what was it? AWS config. So we got that. Okay, so that's really all we need. I've got this AWS module automatically loading. The other modules are kind of commented out because we don't need them right now. So the goal here, so if we hit run, hopefully I've got the incremental build on. I can't remember if I do or not.
I hope so. Took a while. Nothing earlier.
If I do not have incremental build on, we may want to go for coffee. And when we get back, it'll be ready, which is kind of looking that way. Oh no, it says deploying, so build is done.
Oh, that's funny. So there's a sign out method. I wonder what that would be. So that would be invalidating the current session token. So
yes. Are you able to do that with your function?
No, that was not. That was a requirement I did not take into account. The challenge would be, so sign out would basically sign out all your clients, right? That would be the intent. If you sign out of one, sign out of all of them. But I can log in with multiple. Mm-hmm. Which means that there's kind of like almost a sign out counter that you would use to increment, and you pass us metadata that changes the token. And so even if I come back with a token what used to be valid in the past, because the sign-out has been incremented, when I validate that this session is valid, it would say like, no, it's not. This is no longer a valid session token. You have to sign in again with username and password.
Sure.
And then it would give you back something that has the new sign-out count.
What you almost need is, or what you could almost do is, like if you added another record that held on to, like here's the account ID and here's like some session ID, and then you could look that up, or maybe you just have like a GUID or something that you generate, and you look that up.
Yeah, correct. I mean, so every time you say sign out, it effectively creates a new, some metadata, random number, GUID, that it expects to be part of the token. So next time it comes, it says, hey, is this part of the valid group of login sessions? And if it's not, it will reject you.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly, yeah. And if one doesn't exist, then obviously it needs to create one.
Yes.
But I guess we could create initial one right at account creation time. That way one is always available. So when you sign in, it knows. And when you sign out, it resets it.
Well, we wouldn't want to do it at account creation because you're going to log in after the account creation.
Yeah, but multiple logins can happen with the same kind of like salt. It's kind of almost like a salt for all the session tokens. And sign out changes the salt. And that way all your session tokens are invalid.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Right?
Yes. Yes, no, that would work. Of course, you don't really need to do it in the registration, I guess.
Oh, it's just so that way I don't have a race condition when I do the first login that the salt doesn't yet exist. That way there's always an existing salt.
I see what you're saying, because in the sign out you're changing the salt.
Yes, but sign in I don't. So you can have multiple sign-ins for multiple clients.
So you're never checking the salt.
But when you sign out, all your clients get signed out.
Okay, no, that makes a lot of sense actually. That would be a very easy way to do it. Yeah. I like it. Okay. Did we deploy to this, or what did it do? Let's look at Advisor. Yes, so I got the app up and going. So if I come in here on my sign up, it probably freaked out. Oh, no, it just took a while to load. So there we go. So now this is our, this is actually the first time I think you're seeing it.
Yeah.
Where we have our sign up form, so our first and last name. It's that.
I'm looking at your UI form. I see first and last name. Like, well, where's this in the payload? Are you just going to concatenate them?
Yes.
It's like immediate data loss. Like, like if somebody has a name with 3 names in it, I can't tell anymore if the 2 names are part of the first name or the last name.
Yeah, no, that's what, you know, I was kind of laughing about this too. So in that user object that we pass in, it concatenates your first and last name together. So yeah, it's all kinds of lovely, lovely fun here. So, okay.
Oh, that is hilarious.
So
I find it hilarious, sorry.
No, I find it pretty funny as well.
Human necessarily, but it's like, what the heck?
So we probably, I'm just thinking here, you had kind of mentioned something about an AWS client, and I think it's probably a good idea. I hear you have them every once in a while.
Every once in a while.
Yes. So let's see. So we have a public class AWS client. And we'll generate an interface from this later. So, just trying to think here. So we're going to say HTTP response, or actually no, we need a task.
Okay, so how far do you want to go? It's 5:25 in Pacific time.
So let's just go a couple more minutes. I don't think it'll take us too long here to get this basic log, like registration, and
let's see if we can get it to that point. I guess I should probably copy paste that API gateway URL somewhere for you.
So I'm kind of abstracting away the HTTP client. Oops, public.
Moments. So that's sent. What's this?
For .NET.HTTP. I might need.
Okay, and I'll implement the salt functionality to make it more salty, which of course is all invalid now.
All right. What on earth is going on there? Okay. Probably looking at the wrong types there, but that's okay.
Username, salt.
Request message. That's what it was. Okay. So what we want to do, I think Patty was telling us earlier, it was what, API client something or other? It was something like that.
Oh no, but we don't have an API key, so.
Oh, we don't need that?
No,
oh,
I didn't define one. So this one will be. Now you know that you shouldn't be invoking, you shouldn't be initializing HTTP client for every single request because it uses connection pooling.
Yeah.
So you really want to just have one instance globally for your entire application.
Oh, we could do that too.
That should actually be for once a static singleton.
I could do that. I was more just trying to dispose it so we're not holding on to it in memory, but
it's actually, yeah, it's unfortunate that how they implemented it. If they had done the connection pooling behind the scenes, or maybe make it an optional parameter in HTTP clients, that if you don't provide it, then it uses the global one, otherwise you can use a dedicated one, then you could do it this way and it would be doing the right thing, right? It would know when you dispose it to basically close all the connections that were attributed to this. But unfortunately, that's not how they did it.
Well, we can do that later, but right now I just want to make this thing work. I'll make it pretty later.
Exactly.
So where are we going here?
The proverbial later.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll get to it eventually.
Yeah. What's wrong with that? I'm trying to see base address, I guess, new URI, and actually, I know what I need in here. Is say a private AWS config.
There you go. Oh. Well, that's funny. Here. Good. I love the C# REPL. I mean, without it, I would be getting things wrong so often. It'd be sad. Okay, so that creates a new GUID for the salt. When you create your account, it gets stored. The session returns it.
So I guess the question would be, so we have our base URI that we're going to have.
Yep. And then it's /registration/login.
/registration and /login. So, okay. You can send me the, I'll have you send me the that base URI here.
Yep, I'll put it in Slack.
Oh, did you? Okay, cool. So I will get that. And then what about the, you said there was a key as well. We're not using that though? Okay.
No, that would be for future use.
That'll be future use.
That would be that ex-Amazon key.
Okay, gotcha.
Header.
Gotcha.
But for now, there's anybody who has access to the URL could technically be creating records and things like that.
Okay.
That's not how you would want to ship your client. Well,
I can't imagine why.
Yeah, I guess it depends if it's a public API or not, but. Okay, so sign out. Oh yes, that's what I wanted to do. I was like, where was I? Public, I think.
Okay, so do that. Then I am going to create an interface from that.
Okay.
Okay.
I feel like if we once we take a break on this, today, and we discussed some of the design choices we made. We probably would revisit some of them or plan for. I'm just looking at how the session token should be passed in. Should it be request header? I mean, couldn't I bring it part of the payload just for simplicity on my side? But we probably need some coordination on that.
Absolutely. So we can definitely do that. With the AWS config.
Response.
Say private AWS client. Account service, and then we'll pass in our client here. Okay. So, what did we call that again? The account registration request. And we're using Post or?
Post.
Okay.
Yep.
I got to remember how I did all this.
Now I need to remember how do I update a record in DynamoDB without looking out all the other columns?
So we have you said it was just register for the registration, or registration was the, what were the two endpoints?
/ registration.
Registration, okay.
Yeah, and the other one was / login.
Okay.
I figured out how to update the row without nuking all the other things. I know how to put a record, but I just want to update certain column.
So actually going to make that async, so we can use await and client dot send message. Okay. Not the most beautiful code, but it should work. Okay.
So when you write username, do you usually capitalize the N in name, or do you make it a single? I usually capitalize it, but I noticed that this code did not. And so when I created my own property ahead of code capitalize, I just changed it back.
I'll be honest, I'm consistently inconsistent on that one.
Okay, so it depends on the weather. Got it.
If I'm completely honest. So, and then for this, we'll do something similar. And then what am I looking for on the result if we have a good result?
200.
200?
404 if it's bad. 400 if it's bad.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right, so if the status code is okay, then we'll return true. So let's try to run this now.
Aha.
So actually, I'm going to try,
Conditional.
you had, what was it, Bob was your username and password?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Did I keep that or did I nuke it?
No, actually, you know what? I'm going to stop sharing for a minute. And then I need to grab that link.
Okay.
Apparently, I need to wait for this to finish deploying. That way I can stop it. Okay.
Yeah, well, if CloudFormation were on, if I were in the middle of deploying CloudFormation, I would also have to wait for it to finish.
So what was it?
What the heck is that? Okay.
Okay. So build that real quick, and then
I love AWS documentation. It's like always so helpful, filled with useful examples. If you're just going to give me the parameter descriptions, I can get there with, just by metadata in the assemblies.
absolutely. Okay. So I'll reshare my screen here. And so you'll notice like all I did, because we're using the mobile build tools, is I just added this new key and updated my config so that way it will actually use it. So when we get into the account service and using the client, we'll have that available to us. And now let me try to hit, build and deploy. So and actually, I guess while I'm doing that, let me see.
Okay, so in this case, I get it. He wants me to do something slightly different.
Cool. So I'm going to put a breakpoint right here on my login. I'm not really checking on anything for the create, so let me close everything but that. And then In our sign up view model, I'll also put a breakpoint.
Thanks.
Okay.
Did I just do?
All right. So let's go to sign in. And it was Bob password, right?
Bob and password. Yeah, password is password.
Okay.
And so does that do a registration as well?
Well, I'm just trying to see. Well,
Oh, you're trying just yeah. Sign in should work if you use Bob and password, but if you say register, then you should get an error.
Well, that did absolutely nothing. So
Sweet.
Or at least I never hit a breakpoint. So
you never even got that far. Is what you're saying.
I'm not sure how far I got. Is basically what it gets down to.
Okay. Post.
This is where we just start putting breakpoints like every 5 lines until we hit one.
Sounds about right. Okay.
Okay, so sign in.
Now, luckily, I'm updating the API in the same time in the background while you're, of course, testing your front end. But I'm not touching any of the code that you've been using. But since it is a monolithic implementation, it does mean that that function that you're invoking with is being updated while I'm adding new functionality. So that's one of the downsides of having everything in one kind of like function being deployed. Because the function that you're relying on is not changing.
Well, look, nothing could go wrong there.
No, the API could be unavailable for a while. That's right. While you are trying to do something.
Okay. Well, that's certainly interesting.
You got something? Or did it never come back?
It just never came back from my breakpoint. So let me comment out the dialog service. Obviously, the dialog service is not working the way that I intended right now, and I don't want to even bother with it. I'll just put some breakpoints in here in case I end up somewhere.
Do something by accident, like throwing a stone and seeing what happens.
So my dialogue will be the developer dialogue of, hey, I hit a breakpoint.
So you should be good to go. I'm going to test the sign out functionality. Okay, so login should work with Bob and password, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just testing it quickly here. Request, sign out.
Okay, how far are we getting? Oh, do I want to save my username and password to Google?
Totally, Bob and password. Like best kept secret in the universe.
No, go away. What are you doing? Hold on here.
Invalid session token. Oh yeah. Okay. Well, I didn't set it, so that would be certainly be true. Okay. So login. Boom. And get this. Oh wait, I probably have to recreate the account. Hold on a second. I'm gonna quickly nuke the row, but recreate it right away with the same information. It's just because I need the. Well, technically the soul should be set if I sign out. Okay, never mind. I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna test.
Okay.
Okay, so log in. This is my token. Token is a little bit more complex now. So before I just had the username in it.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's actually a JSON object that's being encrypted and sent back. It has the username and the salt, so I can check, which.
Okay.
But I made it a JSON object, so in case we need to add more fields, rather than concatenating strings and figure that out, it's structured now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And since I can't decrypt it, that works fine. Because I can't manipulate it. Well, I could, but I'm not going to. Client send message.
Well, that worked out peachy. Sign out. Invalid session token. Like, sweet. Well, it's probably denying things. It's just, it shouldn't be, so.
So we seem to not have come back from that, which is oh so fun. And these controls need to go away.
Oh, I'm copying here, actually. Okay, that looks good.
Well, this is interesting.
Sign
Okay.
out.
So let me, I don't care about that. Don't care about that. Well, all right, let me get rid of some of these breakpoints. Okay. Hit sign in again.
So you at least have have breakpoints. Now, for some reason, it's not working, the deserialization or something with the session token that it changed. So
so what you're saying is I should be grateful for having breakpoints?
Logging, here we come. Like, great. It's been something.
Okay. Oh. Well, this is fun.
What is it?
It seems like it's dying on this URL.
Okay, show me. Or did it have HTTPS and so on and so on and all that stuff? Oh, that new URI is not working? Okay,
Yeah.
Stop.
All right, so I'm going to stop sharing so I can actually look at this URI without exposing it to the world.
I mean, I'm going to tear it down as soon as we're done here, but yes, go ahead. Where is it?
Well, I've got to redeploy.
Why do you have to redeploy to show me the URL?
Huh? Oh, it's what you sent me. Should be that.
Okay, keep going to the line. And then when you send it, you added slash registration at the end, right?
So.
Not just we needed the concatenation.
Well, I'm setting that as the base. Oh, actually, you know what? But it's failing, so I did that. Really, it should be. Huh?
Where's the URL?
So I'm not exposing. Oh, that's one of the reasons why I did the client is so.
Oh, base address is there. Okay.
Yeah, so this is the base address.
Yeah. Oh, but you're saying then slash registration. Does that because you know there's slash latest, which is the stage name?
Yeah.
And then if you say slash registration, does that remove slash latest?
Yes.
Yes. No, it has to be slash latest slash registration. That's the stage name, which you don't want to put to latest. You need one in API gateway. And then what you can do is you can map a domain name directly to kind of that slash latest URL.
But it's actually blowing up when it creates the URI, which is a little weird.
Okay, I'm just about to test this again to see why it's maybe get some login.
See if we can't.
Session token, yep, got it.
So if we look at the configuration, AWS config. Oh, okay. So I'm an idiot, and I'm sure you're going to see exactly what the problem is very quickly.
You're giving me way too much credit. Okay, so we still have the new HTTP client, which we shouldn't be doing. Oh, you said the API key? Oh.
I reversed.
How did you allocate to the URL? I also found my error. It was so nice to tell me that I didn't set my sort key. I said,
yeah.
okay. Print
So
F for
the
win.
problem is sitting in front of the computer.
Yeah, same here. You're in good company. Okay. So
Okay.
deploy this, and so now sign out should work.
So we'll try and get this up here.
Share your screen again. And then I'll share my screen one more time for showing the sign-out code, assuming it works. I'm quickly testing it in Postman.
Cool.
And I should probably, let's see, there's a way to export. There are multiple ways of exporting it. Collection V1 deprecated, collection V2 no comment, collection V2.1 recommended. I assume 2.1 is not 2.0 compatible, so that's why they added 2.1.
I don't know.
Did they have to do that? Couldn't they just like either call it V3 and make it recommended, or just make it V2 compatible? Weird.
That's a good question.
I don't know. We'll never know. It's one of those mysteries lost
So
to
now
the universe.
actually this is probably going to fail in a minute. So, but I think this part, yes, so that part will be fine. And then, okay, so we come back. And I didn't remove that slash that we just talked about.
Okay, so you should be getting an error technically.
Yes.
That basically you should have gotten a 404 not found because that endpoint doesn't exist.
So let me fix that real quick.
So if you remove the slash, then it will append it.
Yes.
Cool.
So let's
A little bit like a path operation in a way.
Exactly. So it's a relative URL from whatever our base is rather than providing an absolute.
No, sign-out works. Now, the sign-out requires you to have a valid session, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that contains a salt. So I guess I should check that when you're signing out, that the salt of your session is still the salt that is in the database.
Yes.
Before I reset the salt.
Mm-hmm.
So that then old logged out, that basically, otherwise somebody could continuously just DOS you with doing sign out, sign out, sign out, sign out.
That
So sound is only valid if it's here. These little details. Great. So I have to do like a conditional update, sweet Jesus.
Okay, so we have that. Let me share the screen again. So we go Bob, password. Hopefully the 10th time is the charm.
Yep.
Don't know what it did.
Did it ever come back? Status code? No?
Yeah, it never hit this breakpoint.
Oh no.
All right. Well, I will have to continue looking into that, but why don't I make it where you share the little bit that you were working on, and then we can kind of wrap up here.
Sounds good. Okay, so I was just going to try to add this, but I won't check that change in then. Let's see. First, let me start sharing. Okay. So this change starts a little bit where all the other ones start, which is in the definition of our CloudFormation infrastructure. So I added another API endpoint post signout.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that's then mapped to a method called signout, which I was in the process of implementing. So this is the part that doesn't yet work. So let me comment that out.
Now, did that say sign out in the YAML and then you have sign out async in the code?
Yes, because the /async is a C# convention. So you could, if you wanted to, have the exact name here. But the tool is smart enough to check if your method has the suffix async.
Well, that's actually really cool.
Because this name is also used to generate the Swagger documentation for this endpoint. So the method name will be called signout. Now, the operation name, actually. So that the operation name is not contaminated by your C# conventions, it's basically smart enough to know that you can optionally have the async suffix.
Oh,
if you had, for some reason, both, the exact match wins.
Okay.
So don't do both, though.
Don't do both.
That could be very confusing. But so to start at the beginning with the changes, so I added this salt in the record here. And it's also now part of a new object class that I created called session info. So now before we just encrypted the username, send it back. So now we need a little bit more information, username and the salt that was used for that session. So for that purpose, I changed the login method, login async. It's kind of funny that it's login, but it's sign out. It's not it's.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind. That's just me. It's like, shouldn't it be sign in and sign out or log in and log out? Anywho, so when we create the account, so going back up here, one of the new things is I immediately give it a salt. So first time you create your account, you'll have a salt that is used by all your logins. And so when we do the same thing as before, we try to find this record. If you don't find it, we say you didn't find it. If the hash of the password doesn't match, we say we didn't find it. And then instead of now saying encrypt secret async of just a username, I actually serialize to JSON this object, the session info, which contains the username from the request and the salt from the record that was used for validating the password as well.
Okay.
Also, I'm not being super smart here. I'm just retrieving an entire row, but you can configure your get row your get item operation to just return the attributes that you want.
Okay.
That's the name that they use for columns, which made finding so much easier on Google when I refer to as columns, and the right terminology is attributes. Anywho, so signout is the one I was implementing. The first thing it will do is the deserialization well, it will decrypt this first. And the reason why this is an await operation, decryption is actually not done inside your Lambda function. They have an API for decrypting KMS secrets. So you send it the thing you want to have be decrypted, the ID of the key to use. Actually, no, you don't need that because it's part in it. You send it to the thing. It will check that you have authorization to do so, and then send it back to you decrypted over a secure link. But that's why it's then an asynchronous operation, because it does communication. And what we send over is the requested session token. So what we get back now is supposed to be a session info object. And that has a username that we use as a primary key. And this was the reason why earlier didn't work when I first tested. I forgot to set the sort key to this fixed account value. And then this is the new GUID. And then I say simply update item. The reason I do it this way is update item are supposed to put item. Put item would nuke the row and just set the fields that are passed in. But update is smart enough to just change the values that I have provided if they are different. So the values I did not provide will not be touched.
Okay.
So in this case, it will either add the salt attribute if it doesn't exist, or update it to the new value.
Okay.
And what I was trying to add here is the thing we just discussed moments ago. I should really be passing in the current salt and say as a condition for the update is that the salt you have on this record right now matches this value, and otherwise refuse the operation. So that will guarantee that somebody cannot just continue sign out should they happen to have compromised an old session token. Okay. And that's it. That's basically, if for some reason there's an error, I log the error as info and just say bad request, because most likely the reason it didn't work is something either we weren't able to deserialize, that's not valid JSON, but most likely you send me something that isn't good. Fantastic. So the one thing that's missing here is, of course, checking if the other exception that could happen is what we had earlier here, which was the condition failed exception, which means that. So how would you want that to be responded? So you're asking for sign out, but your salt, your session token is actually not valid, so I'm not going to do it. So is it invalid session? Yeah, so I guess it would just be an invalid session token. Yeah. But in this case, maybe I would log something different so I can differentiate between the two. That the reason we returned this was because the update condition failed. Update condition failed. Okay. It's currently not implemented, so this exception will never be thrown.
Sure.
But once this is in place, then this would, in our CloudWatch logs, we would see why did it return invalid session token? Well, in this case, it wasn't a deserialization issue, but it was because the update condition actually wasn't the one, which is an expected situation, right?
Absolutely.
So,
well, fantastic.
Great. Well, I'll guess I'll commit these changes, push them up, and at least we'll have like a starting point should we decide to continue this.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I know we've gone a little over the originally.
just an hour.
Yeah,
we started an hour late. We went an hour longer than anticipated. So.
Yes, no. But I really appreciate you having me here and spending some time today to kind of go over this. It's been a lot of fun. So.
Cool, great, thanks.
Well, thank you so much. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you next time.